My parents uninvited me to family reunion, whispering behind my back, "She just wants a free vacation," so I booked a resort nearby and invited everyone they didn't think I knew. I never expected it to happen like this, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I always believed that family was supposed to be a place of support, love, and acceptance, but for me, it had become a constant source of frustration. My name is Abigail, and I'm in my early 30s. I'm a product of a broken family, and after my divorce, things just got worse. I had been married to James for almost 10 years, but that chapter of my life ended badly. We both had our faults, but after years of trying to make it work, we eventually gave up. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, seeking peace and a fresh start. I wasn't angry anymore, I just wanted some space to heal. During my marriage, I had always tried to stay close to my family. But when things started to fall apart in my personal life, I noticed something disturbing. My parents, who had always been a source of support in the past, started to distance themselves. They were still there, but they weren't really there. I remember countless visits where I'd try to talk to them about my struggles, only to be met with silence or comments that minimized my feelings. My mother, Susan, had a tendency to brush things off, especially when it came to my emotional pain. My father, Gregory, always seemed more invested in his work or his image than in what was going on in my life. And then there was my younger brother, Dorian, who somehow always stayed on the sidelines, offering no support, no sympathy. I don't even think he knew how to care in a meaningful way. That brings us to the phone call I received one afternoon, a few weeks before the annual family reunion. I had gotten used to their passive-aggressive ways, but this? This was different. "Abigail, I'm afraid we've decided not to invite you to the family reunion this year," my mom said, her tone overly polite, too calm. "We think it's best." I was silent for a moment, trying to process what I had just heard. Why? What did I do? It's just. You've always been asking for things, and well, this year it just feels like you're only coming to get a free vacation. You've been through a lot, and we understand that, but it's just too much, honey. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. A free vacation? I repeated, confused. Mom, I just wanted to see you all. I haven't seen you in months. Well, it's just, we think it's for the best. You don't need to worry about it. We're sure you understand. I didn't understand. Not at all. But it wasn't worth arguing. I had been trying for years to gain their approval, and every time, it felt like I was just a burden. This time, I decided I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't be the desperate daughter trying to earn her place at the table. No, this time I would take control of the situation. I hung up the phone and immediately felt a surge of anger. How could they think I was asking for a handout? How could they think that after everything I'd been through? The divorce had stripped me of so much, and all I was asking for was some love, some recognition, some genuine connection. But now, it seemed clear, my family was never going to give that to me. But instead of stewing in bitterness, I started making plans. I refused to let this uninviting moment define me. If they didn't want me there, I'd make my own reunion. The idea came to me almost instantly. I had been eyeing a small resort just outside Asheville, a place that felt like it was worlds away from the chaos of everyday life. It was quiet, peaceful, and the perfect place for a retreat. Why should I stay in my lonely cottage when I could gather the people who truly mattered to me and have my own version of a family reunion? I could create the atmosphere I had always longed for, one filled with understanding and mutual respect. I reached out to some old friends I hadn't seen in years, people who had stood by me during tough times, people who knew what it felt like to be abandoned by family. Alexis, my best friend from college, was the first person I called. "I'm hosting my own reunion," I told her, the excitement building up in my voice. "I'm booking a place nearby. It's going to be small, but it's going to be the family I choose." She was thrilled, of course. She knew how much I needed this. Over the next few weeks, I finalized the plans. I kept it simple: close friends, a couple of coworkers I was close with, and a few neighbors from my hometown who had always treated me like family. No pretense, no expectations, just people who cared. I made sure to keep everything a secret from my real family. They didn't deserve to know. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of thinking they still had control over me. As the day of the reunion approached, I drove up to the resort, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The drive was long, but the moment I arrived, I felt at ease. The air was crisp, and the landscape was as beautiful as I remembered. I checked into my cabin, unpacked my bags, and let out a breath I didn't even realize I had been holding. That evening, as the sun began to set, people started to trickle in. Alexis and her husband, Max, were the first to arrive. Then came a few college friends, followed by a couple of old coworkers who I hadn't seen in years. I couldn't believe how easily the group gelled, how comfortable everyone felt. There was no judgment here, no questions about what had happened to my family, no whispered rumors. Just warmth and laughter, the kind of atmosphere I had always longed for but never found. And then, just when I thought things were settling in for the night, I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel. I looked up and froze. There, standing by the front door, were my parents. My father, Gregory, looked out of place, his arms crossed in front of his chest, as if he were trying to appear casual. My mother, Susan, stood beside him, looking both hesitant and defiant. They didn't have to say a word. I knew exactly what they were doing here. They thought they could just show up uninvited, as if their presence was going to make everything right. They thought they could walk in and act like nothing had happened, like they weren't the ones who had uninvited me in the first place. I stood up slowly, walking over to them. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice steady but tinged with disbelief. My mother's face was tight, her smile forced. We just wanted to see how things were going," she said. "We thought maybe you'd be willing to talk, now that you've had your little reunion." I took a deep breath, refusing to let them see how much their presence stung. "I'm fine. I don't need to talk to you right now, Mom. This is my reunion. My family. The people who actually care." The silence that followed was thick with tension. My father looked at me, his gaze unreadable. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, my mother sighed. "We're just trying to make things right, Abigail." I shook my head. "It's too late for that." They stood there for a moment longer, not knowing what to say or how to react. And then, without another word, they turned and left. I didn't watch them go. I couldn't. I knew I had to move on from this. Their opinion of me no longer mattered. As I watched the others gather around the fire pit, laughing and enjoying each other's company, I realized something. I wasn't alone. I never had been. And I didn't need them to define my worth. This weekend, this little reunion of mine, was exactly what I needed to heal. My family, in all their dysfunction, had no place in it. I had built my own family, one that loved me for who I was, not for who they thought I should be. And as the fire crackled and the night grew darker, I finally felt like I was home. The evening continued to unfold in a way that I hadn't expected, in the best possible way. My parents had left, and as I watched them drive away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. It wasn't that I was glad they were gone, but rather that I had finally come to terms with the fact that I no longer needed their validation. The people around me now, the friends who had come to my side time and time again, were enough. I turned back to the group, feeling the warmth of the fire pit wrapping around me like a hug. Alexis was already pouring drinks, Max was grilling food, and a few others had settled into comfortable chairs, laughing as though they had all known each other for years. It was a strange feeling, being surrounded by people who truly cared about me, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely enjoyed my company. "Hey, can we get the birthday girl another drink?" Max teased, raising his glass towards me. I smiled, knowing full well my birthday wasn't for another few months, but it didn't matter. The fact that they were making an effort to make me feel special was enough. "Sure, but only if I get to make a toast first," I said, raising my glass with a mischievous grin. They all fell silent, expectantly watching me. The fire crackled softly in the background, and for a moment, I took in the faces of the people who had shown up, the ones who had made time for me. These were the real moments, the ones that mattered. To the family we choose, I said, my voice a little unsteady. I wasn't used to expressing myself like this, but the words came naturally. To the people who see us, who support us, and who stand by us when the world turns its back. There was a chorus of here, followed by clinking glasses. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling the weight of the last few months lift off my shoulders. It felt good to be seen, really seen. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. The night wore on. Conversations drifted from work gossip to hilarious anecdotes about college days, and for once, I was just present. No anxiety about my parents not accepting me. No worry about whether or not I'd be good enough. It was pure, uncomplicated joy. I felt like myself again, the version of me that had been buried under years of unmet expectations and strained relationships. Eventually, the conversation turned to relationships. It was a topic that always made me a little uncomfortable, especially when I was surrounded by couples. My divorce was still a sore subject, even though it had been 2 years. But for some reason, the conversation felt different this time. It wasn't out of pity, and no one was asking for details. We just talked about love, the complexity of it, and how sometimes the right relationship is the one you have with yourself. Max, who had always been a bit of a joker, asked, "So, Abigail, you've got this amazing gathering, your own version of a family reunion, and yet, here we are, just us. Any chance of someone else joining in the fun?" He winked playfully. I laughed, shaking my head. Maybe. I'm not in any rush for anything serious right now. I've got enough on my plate with just figuring myself out. That's fair, Alexis chimed in, always the practical one. Honestly, I think it's nice to see you so settled. It's been a while since I've seen you so at ease. I smiled at her, grateful for her words. She was right. I had been running on empty for so long, trying to keep up with everyone else's expectations. Now, for the first time in ages, I felt like I was living my life for me, not for anyone else. As the evening turned to night, I noticed that a few of the guests had started to gather their things, clearly winding down for the evening. There was a peacefulness to it, the kind that only comes when you know that everyone is comfortable, no one feels obligated to stay, and no one is pretending to be something they're not. But just as I thought the night was winding down, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned to see Dorian, my younger brother, standing a little awkwardly by the edge of the gathering. He had been quiet all evening, but I had seen him around a few times, talking to some of the guests. It wasn't unusual for him to be distant, but something about the way he was standing there, not quite fitting in, caught my attention. I got up from my seat and walked over to him. "Dorian," I said softly. "You okay?" He looked at me, a flicker of something crossing his face, regret, maybe? But it disappeared quickly, replaced by that same guarded expression I had seen countless times. "Yeah," he replied, though his voice didn't quite match the word. Just wanted to check in." I raised an eyebrow. "Check in on what?" He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know. I guess I didn't expect all this." "All what?" I asked, genuinely confused. He glanced over at the group sitting around the fire, laughing and talking. The way everyone gets along. I didn't know people actually cared. You know? I stood there for a moment, processing his words. Dorian had always been the quiet one, but this? This felt different. I had spent so many years trying to get through to him, trying to make him understand that family wasn't just about shared blood, that it was about being there for each other. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see that now. "You know, Dorian, you don't have to pretend," I said quietly. "If you want to join us, you're welcome. No one's going to judge you for being here." He shifted uneasily, and I could tell he was torn between wanting to be part of the group and not wanting to deal with the discomfort that came with it. But before he could respond, Alexis walked over, a welcoming smile on her face. "Hey, Dorian, we were just talking about how much we miss your sister's cooking. She's the best, isn't she?" Alexis said, her voice warm and inviting. Dorian hesitated, then glanced at me. "I don't know," he said, "I've never really been part of the family, you know?" Alexis's smile never faltered. "Family's not about the past. It's about now. And we're happy to have you. Trust me." For the first time that night, Dorian's posture softened. He seemed to relax a little, the walls around him crumbling just a bit. "I guess I could stay for a bit longer," he muttered, almost sheepishly. "That's the spirit," I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. And so, for the rest of the evening, Dorian stayed. He didn't talk much, but he didn't leave either. Slowly, he integrated into the group, finding comfort in the company of people who weren't judging him or holding him to the impossible standards that our parents often did. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small victory. As the night deepened, the fire burned low, and I felt a strange peace settle over me. I was surrounded by people who cared, by people who didn't expect me to be perfect, by people who simply wanted to share their time and their stories with me. For once, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I was part of something real. Dorian's quiet presence by the fire, along with the laughter of old friends, told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't alone. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly home. But, as much as I wanted to hold on to this peace, I couldn't help but wonder if this was truly the end. Was I really done with my family for good, or was there still something left to salvage? Would this newfound peace hold, or would old wounds inevitably resurface? As the night wore on, the fire eventually burned down to a soft glow. The sounds of quiet conversation and occasional laughter blended with the natural chorus of the night. Dorian, now sitting more comfortably around the group, had begun to loosen up, his earlier stiffness giving way to a cautious ease. The others welcomed him without fanfare, simply letting him be a part of the moment. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. I felt like I had finally given him a chance to experience something outside the narrow definition of family that our parents had always insisted on. The night was winding down, and one by one, guests began to drift off to their cabins. Alexis and Max were among the first, but not before offering a few encouraging words to Dorian, who simply nodded and gave a tight smile in return. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I was beginning to feel like I could finally close a chapter on this strange, painful family dynamic. But my thoughts kept drifting back to the uninvited ones, my parents. It had been a few hours since they left, and I couldn't shake the thought of them. I hadn't wanted them there, hadn't needed them there, but there was still something unresolved hanging between us. They hadn't even apologized for the way they treated me or for making assumptions about me. They hadn't even tried to understand what I was going through or why I did what I did. They just left. I was tired of this constant back and forth. I was tired of them thinking they could control me, that their opinions were the ones that mattered most. I had shown them, in a way, that I didn't need their approval. But there was still something that gnawed at me, the need for them to understand the impact of their actions. I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for a shift in the dynamic. And I was going to make sure they saw it. I excused myself from the group, heading to my cabin for the night, my mind racing with the events of the evening. I couldn't shake the idea of showing them, once and for all, that their actions no longer had any power over me. But I wasn't going to confront them directly, no, that wouldn't be satisfying enough. This had to be something more, something that would stick. I opened my laptop and began typing. I crafted a message to my parents, carefully worded, but pointed. I reminded them of the hurt they had caused and how their assumptions had led to this, me finding my own happiness, creating a family of my own, and realizing that I didn't need their toxic presence in my life to thrive. I hit send. The message wasn't designed to be a plea for reconciliation, it was meant to be a declaration. One that they could ignore or, if they were wise, read and reflect upon. The message, "Dear Mom and Dad, I wanted to take a moment to tell you how I feel. You've made it very clear that you don't want me at the family reunion, and that's fine. It's not the first time I've felt like an outsider in our family. But you've been wrong about me, and I'm no longer going to stay quiet about it. I didn't come here to get a free vacation. I didn't ask for anything from you except understanding and love. But I guess those are things you have yet to learn how to give. You've chosen to treat me as a burden instead of a daughter, and I won't pretend that doesn't hurt anymore. But instead of fighting for your approval, I've chosen to build a family with the people who actually care, who actually show up when it counts. I'm not asking you to change. But I want you to understand that I've moved on. And no matter how many times you try to control or manipulate, I'm not coming back into your world unless you learn to respect the one I've created for myself. Take care, Abigail." The moment I clicked send, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. It wasn't anger or hatred, it was the final acceptance of what I had always known deep down. They weren't going to change. I had spent my entire life hoping for something that wasn't coming, and now I was done waiting. Done trying. I didn't need their apology to move forward. This was my life, and I was in control now. The next morning, I woke up to a quiet cabin, the sunlight filtering through the trees and casting a soft glow on the wooden floor. I felt a sense of clarity that I hadn't felt in years. My life was mine to live, and I had taken the steps to protect myself from further hurt. But then came the response from my parents. It was a brief email from my mother, something that might have seemed conciliatory to an outsider, but I saw through it immediately. She apologized in a roundabout way, saying she was sorry I felt excluded but still made excuses for her behavior, making it clear that I was still, in her eyes, too sensitive. It was the kind of apology that didn't really address the issue, but it was enough to show me they still weren't willing to truly take responsibility. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Part of me wanted to lash out, to reply with everything I had been holding back for years. But then I realized that her email, though painful, was exactly what I needed. It was confirmation that nothing was going to change. And that realization freed me. So, I did nothing. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. I simply closed my laptop and went on with my day. The peace I had found over the weekend wasn't fleeting, it was permanent. That afternoon, I sent out a message to everyone who had joined me at the resort. I thanked them again for coming, for being part of something that truly mattered. The reunion had been a success, not because of the venue or the food or the games, but because of the people who filled it with love and laughter. It was a reminder that family doesn't have to be bound by blood. It's made of moments, connections, and understanding. As the week passed, I went back to my life in Asheville. My work was fulfilling, my friendships were solid, and I had finally let go of the guilt I had carried for so long. I didn't need my parents to validate me anymore, and I didn't need to be a part of their toxic narrative. The people who mattered, the ones who truly cared, were the ones who were there for me when it counted. They were the ones who made me feel whole. And then, a few weeks later, something unexpected happened. My mother called. The conversation was brief and awkward, but it wasn't filled with accusations or dismissals like it had been in the past. There was a hesitation in her voice when she said, "I've been thinking about everything, Abigail. Maybe we should try again." But not with expectations. Just, "I don't know. Maybe we've been wrong." It wasn't an apology, not in the way I had always hoped for, but it was a crack in the door, a small recognition of the distance between us. And while I wasn't ready to let them back into my life just yet, I knew that the door had been opened. It was their choice now to walk through it. But here's the thing, I wasn't waiting for them to fix things anymore. I wasn't waiting for anything. My family reunion had already taken place, and it had been exactly what I needed. I had finally created my own version of family, a family that didn't require me to beg for love, respect, or validation. I had learned that revenge, in its truest form, wasn't about getting back at someone. It was about taking back the control that had always been mine.